What if everything you believe about power is a lie? What if silence is sharper than words and comfort deadlier than enemies? What if genius isn't admired but feared? Stay. Your answers are waiting. The lie about genius. People think genius is a gift. They imagine it as luck or some natural spark that only a few are born with. But that's the story they were told. And stories like this are not meant to free you. They are meant to keep you quiet. The picture they show is soft. The old professor with white hair, the kind man who speaks gently, the quiet thinker who smiles but never offends. That is the mask. It is made to make you believe genius is safe, safe to admire, safe to quote, safe to follow. But real genius has never been safe. It is not soft. It is not gentle. It is not innocent. Real genius is sharp. It cuts through lies. It destroys illusions. It questions the things no one wants questioned, and that makes it dangerous. Think about it. Most people don't think at all. They repeat. They memorize. They obey. They take what they are told from pulpits, schools, and news. Then they repeat it back like it's their own truth. That's not thinking, that's survival. But the one who thinks differently, who sees the cracks, who notices the stage hands behind the curtain, that person is no longer safe for the system. He stops being an audience member. He becomes a threat. Because when you see the truth, you are no longer controlled by the story. You become harder to use. That's why genius has always been feared, not because of how much it knows, but because of what it dares to do. Knowledge alone is cheap. Books are everywhere. But action, the decision to use what you see, to step out of the line everyone else is standing in, that is rare. And when someone does it, the world doesn't applaud. The world gets scared. And here's the thing, genius doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't ask if it's polite. It doesn't soften truth just to make others comfortable. That's why people often confuse it with evil. Because genius does not bow to the rules built to keep everyone calm. It breaks them when breaking is needed. It rewrites them when rewriting is necessary. So the big lie about genius is this. They want you to think it's a blessing, a gift, a light for the world. But in truth, it's a weapon that turns silence into strategy, a weapon that cuts through the illusions built to keep everyone obedient. And if you really want to see genius, you don't look for the smiling face in the crowd. You look for the one who isn't clapping, the one who isn't repeating, the one who isn't begging for approval. Because that person is not watching the show. He is studying the stage, and one day he will use it. They told you genius is light, but what if it's a blade in the dark? Waiting, silent, sharp, and the cut it makes is the world you live in. Obedience versus clarity. Look at most people. They are not awake. They move through life as if on a script written long before they were born. They go to school. They memorize. They repeat. They follow rules they never questioned. They copy what they saw others do. And in return, they are rewarded with safety. This is obedience. It looks normal because everyone does it. Obedience tells you when to stand, when to speak, when to sit back down. It gives you comfort. It gives you community. It gives you approval. But it also takes something away. It takes your ability to see for yourself. Now compare that to clarity. Clarity is not about memorizing or obeying. It is about seeing things as they are, not as you were told they are. And once you see clearly, you cannot go back. You cannot unsee the lie. You cannot forget the stage lights and the curtain ropes. You start asking questions others don't want asked. Obedience makes you safe. Clarity makes you dangerous. The obedient man will recite the same truth everyone else repeats. He will clap when told to clap. He will trust symbols without asking who designed them. He will play his role until he dies, and he will call it a good life. The clear man is different. He looks at the symbol and asks, who created this? Who benefits from it? What is being hidden? He looks at the rule and asks, who made it? And for what reason? He looks at the crowd and sees a herd. He looks at the herd's shepherd and sees a salesman. And here is the problem. When you have clarity, you no longer belong in the herd. You are no longer safe for the system. You don't clap when they want. You don't kneel when they demand. You don't chant when they start the song. And that silence makes others uneasy. They don't hate you because you are wrong. They hate you because you are free. This is the real divide. Not rich versus poor. Not strong versus weak. but obedient versus clear. One side lives by borrowed truths. The other side lives by their own. One side asks, "What is right?" The other side asks, "Who said this is right, and why should I believe them?" That's why genius always begins at the moment obedience ends. You don't have to be the smartest. You don't have to know everything. You only need to stop swallowing the pre-packaged truths. You only need to demand your own vision. But once you do, you carry a heavy price. You will feel alone. You will be treated as an outsider. The herd will whisper. The leaders will warn against you. And yet, if you stay with clarity, you will have something obedience can never give: control over yourself. Clarity is not soft. It strips away comfort, but it is also freedom. And freedom in a world built on obedience is the rarest form of power. What happens when the silent man stops clapping? The crowd feels uneasy. The leaders feel threatened, and that single pause, that refusal, becomes the loudest act of rebellion. Most people hate silence. They cannot stand it. In a room without noise, they rush to fill the air with words. Words about nothing. Words for approval. Words to hide their unease. But silence is not empty. Silence is full of thought, full of observation, full of power. The obedient man speaks too soon. He argues to be heard. He shows his cards before the game begins. He reveals his weakness in his rush to explain. He mistakes noise for strength. The clear man understands silence differently. He uses it as a shield. He watches while others argue. He listens while they expose themselves. He collects what others waste. He lets their passion show their weakness. He lets their words trap them, and while they bleed out energy, he is still. Silence gives space for strategy. It hides intention. It clouds direction. And when the time comes to act, silence makes the action sharper, faster, irreversible. The blow lands before anyone saw the hand move. Think about predators in the wild. The loud animal warns you it is coming. The silent one is already there. By the time you notice, it is too late. Silence is not passivity. It is not weakness. It is not fear. Silence is patience. Silence is timing. Silence is positioning. It is the preparation before the strike. And that is why genius values it. People often confuse silence with emptiness. They think if you do not speak, you have nothing to say. They think if you do not react, you have no feeling. But the truth is different. Silence can be loaded. It can be a weapon waiting. It can be an answer sharper than words. A man who controls his silence controls his presence. He decides when to reveal, when to act, when to strike. His silence becomes unreadable. Others guess, others wonder, others fear, and that fear gives him space to move. Noise is common. Silence is rare. Noise is forgettable. Silence is remembered. Ask yourself, which moment is stronger, the endless debate or the single pause that makes the room uneasy? This is why silence is dangerous. It cannot be predicted. It cannot be controlled. It cannot be debated. You cannot fight silence with noise. You cannot win against a man who refuses to answer on your terms. Genius does not rush to explain. He does not speak to be liked. He does not argue to prove himself. He lets others reveal themselves. And when the silence breaks, it is never small talk. It is decisive. It changes the room. And so, silence is not a pause in power. It is power itself. It is the mask that hides the plan. It is the wall that absorbs the attack. It is the stage before the strike. You thought silence was weakness. But what if silence is the sharpest sound? What if the quietest man in the room is the one already pulling the strings? Fear, love, and control. Every leader faces the same question. Is it better to be loved or feared? People have asked this for centuries. The answer is not simple, but it is clear. Love is fragile. It changes with time. It fades when tested. It disappears the moment it costs something. People love when it is easy. They love when it is safe. But the second love becomes painful. It begins to die. Fear is different. Fear does not fade as quickly. Fear lingers. Fear binds. A man may forget why he admired you, but he does not forget why he fears you. That memory stays alive even when years pass. This is why those who build power cannot rely only on love. Love alone cannot protect. Love alone cannot hold. Love alone cannot make obedience last. Fear must be part of it. Not wild fear, but measured fear. Fear mixed with respect. Fear sharpened by timing. Fear strong enough to stop betrayal before it starts. But fear by itself is dangerous too. A man who rules with only fear creates enemies. He creates rebellion. He forces others to plan against him because constant terror leaves no room for loyalty. And so, the genius does not stop at fear. He blends it with something else. Control. Control is the balance between fear and love. It is the careful use of both. One sharp act of cruelty followed by a calculated act of mercy. One display of power followed by a gesture of protection. People remember the pain, but they also remember the pardon. And together, those two memories form a bond too deep to escape. A subject who fears you may conspire. A subject who fears you and thanks you will die for you. That is the secret. That is how power survives beyond the moment. And mercy itself becomes a weapon, not because it is soft, but because it is strategic. Mercy lowers defenses. It builds gratitude. Gratitude makes obedience stronger than chains. The crowd will kneel not just because they fear punishment, but because they believe they owe you something. Genius knows this. He does not rely on chance. He does not hope people stay loyal. He shapes loyalty with fear and mercy, with cruelty and kindness. He makes sure no feeling is wasted. He makes sure no bond is left unguarded. This balance is not about kindness. It is not about cruelty. It is about control. And control is the only currency that lasts. They told you mercy is kindness. But what if mercy is the sharpest trap? What if every pardon you thank today is the chain that holds you tomorrow? Most people think power is loud. They imagine a man shouting from a stage. They imagine a crown, a throne, a crowd bowing in the square. That is what they are shown. But the real structure of power is not on display. It hides behind rituals, behind systems, behind habits. People never question. Power that is visible invites sabotage. Power that is invisible becomes impossible to remove. Genius understands this. He does not stand in the light when he can control the switches from the dark. He does not need his name on the door when he can hold the keys to the vault. Replace the name, the door still locks. This is the architecture of power. It is built like a machine, one lever at a time, one ally at a time, one secret at a time. None of it looks dangerous on its own. Together, it becomes unbreakable. The crowd thinks loyalty is forever. They believe once it is earned, it cannot be lost. Genius knows better. Loyalty is not eternal. It is rented. It is tied to need, not sentiment. The moment you are no longer useful, the crowd forgets you. That is why genius builds systems instead of depending on loyalty. A system does not change its mind. A machine does not betray. Once built, it keeps working. Even if the man who built it disappears, the machine still runs in his shape. And this is the danger others miss. They believe they are free when in truth, they are moving inside the system someone else designed. They speak the words the system allows. They live the choices the system offers. They believe they are deciding, but their decisions were already narrowed long before. This is how genius hides his power. He lets others wear the crown while he controls the food, the money, the information. The man with the crown looks like the ruler, but the man who controls the flow is the one no one dares touch. Even mercy fits into this design. When the system punishes, it is expected. When the system forgives, it is remembered. People thank the same structure that chains them. Gratitude becomes a deeper leash than fear. The architecture of power is not built in speeches. It is built in habits. When people line up without thinking, when they use the same words without asking, when they follow a ritual without knowing who wrote it, that is when the system is strongest, because no one fights what feels natural. And genius knows permanence is the enemy of power. A fixed symbol becomes weak. A fixed ritual invites rebellion. So he keeps the machine moving. He rotates slogans. He changes the script before it goes stale. He rebuilds the stage before the cracks show, always one step ahead of erosion. This is power you do not see. It does not shout. It does not beg. It does not explain. It simply works. And by the time you notice it, you are already inside it. What if the real ruler is not the man on the throne, but the one who built the floor beneath it? And what if that floor belongs to him forever? Discipline and survival. The greatest danger to power is not always an enemy. It is comfort. Comfort is the poison that dulls the edge. Comfort makes you slow. Comfort makes you blind. Most men do not fall because of outside attack. They fall because they stop sharpening themselves. They win one battle, then they relax. They get applause and they believe it will last. They trust the image they built, and in that moment they begin to rot. Genius knows this. That is why he wages war not just against rivals, but against himself. He does not allow comfort to settle. He does not allow peace to blind him. He treats every crown as temporary. He treats every victory as fragile. He doubts his own wins more than he doubts his enemies. This is not weakness. It is discipline. Discipline is the shield against decay. Discipline is the weapon against betrayal. Discipline is the wall that keeps power alive when everything else fades. Think of it like a watchtower. The man who stays awake when everyone else sleeps sees the danger first. The man who trains when others rest has the edge. The man who audits himself, who questions his own habits, who cuts his own weakness before it grows, he is the one who endures. Without discipline, clarity dies. Without discipline, power collapses. You cannot see the truth if you are surrounded by flattery. You cannot stay sharp if you trust your own myth. And you cannot survive if you start believing you are safe. So genius lives with doubt. Not the doubt that weakens, but the doubt that protects. He doubts comfort. He doubts loyalty. He doubts peace. Because he knows all three are fragile. This is why genius often walks alone, not because he loves solitude, but because solitude keeps vision alive. Surrounded by noise, truth suffocates. Alone, he can hear it. Alone, he can see the cracks before they break. And when storms come, when betrayal rises, when systems begin to shift, the man with discipline is already ready. He has trained his instincts. He has sharpened his edge. He has prepared for the moment everyone else prayed would never arrive. Discipline is not about rules. It is not about perfection. It is about survival. It is about sharpening every day, even when no one is watching. It is about being ready for the dagger that comes not from the front, but from behind. Because comfort is always the hidden enemy. Comfort whispers that you can rest. Comfort tells you the system is safe. Comfort says the applause will last. And if you listen, you are already finished. But genius does not listen. He cuts comfort away like rot. He distrusts peace like a mirage. He treats every soft moment as a threat. And that is why he survives when others collapse. They told you enemies would destroy you. But what if the real killer is comfort? And what if the softest chair you sit in is already sharpening the blade? The highest power is not to be admired. It is not to be loved. It is not even to be feared. The highest power is to be required. Think about it. A king can be replaced. A hero can be forgotten. Even the most feared man can be destroyed. But the one who designs the system, the one who becomes part of its function, he cannot be removed, because without him, nothing works. This is the difference between being wanted and being inevitable. When you are wanted, people have a choice. They may choose you today and abandon you tomorrow. But when you are required, there is no choice. The machine cannot run without you. The game cannot continue without your presence. The structure collapses if you are gone. Genius does not chase applause. He does not hunger for recognition. He builds networks, systems, rituals that depend on his vision. He makes himself the condition, not the option. People stop asking whether they want him and begin to accept that he is already built into the design. This is why genius never gets trapped in one image. He does not lock himself into a single symbol or a single ritual. He shifts before erosion sets in. He refreshes his relevance before the crowd gets bored. He stages new beginnings before the old ones rot. By the time people notice, the stage is rebuilt, and he is already the architect behind it. And when storms come, when chaos breaks systems, when illusions crack, the crowd does not turn to the loudest man. They turn to the one they quietly depended on all along. Not out of love, not out of faith, out of need, because the system no longer works without him. This is why history belongs not to the admired, but to the effective, not to the loud king, but to the quiet architect. not to the one with the crown, but to the one who designed the bridge everyone is standing on. Becoming inevitable is not luck. It is not destiny. It is design, step by step, lever by lever, function by function, until people stop seeing you as a person and start seeing you as the structure itself. And in that moment, you do not have to demand obedience. You do not have to beg for loyalty. You do not even have to show your face. You have already won, because obedience is no longer a choice. It is survival. They told you power is about being admired, but what if the real power is when people stop seeing you at all, yet every move they make still belongs to you? Beyond the stage, genius does not stop at discipline or inevitability. There is one last move: to vanish while still shaping everything others see. This is the quietest and most dangerous form of power. Most rulers want to be remembered. They build statues. They stamp their names on laws. They crave monuments, applause, and history books. But all of this fades. Statues break. Names rot. Crowds forget. Fame can be stolen. The true genius knows this. He does not cling to visibility. He does not need to be the face on the coin or the voice in the speech. He builds structures instead. He writes habits so deep people forget who wrote them. He shapes systems so natural that no one even asks where they came from. And then he steps out of sight. He lets others fight for the throne. He lets others burn under the spotlight. They argue, they boast, they fall. Meanwhile, his design survives. His presence stays, not as a name, but as the function itself. This is how genius becomes untouchable. Rivals cannot fight what they cannot see. Crowds cannot betray what they no longer notice. And yet, without him, nothing works. The machine still runs in his image. The stage still bends to his plan. This is not weakness. It is the highest form of control. To be visible is to be vulnerable. To be invisible but required, that is perfection. Think of the hidden architect. The bridge carries thousands of men, but no one remembers the engineer. The market moves, the city grows, the system lives, but behind it all is the hand that designed it. That hand is forgotten, but its work is not. Genius does not fight for credit. Credit is fragile. Credit can be stolen. He fights for structure. Structure endures. Even when the crowd changes, even when leaders fall, even when generations pass, the structure continues. This is legacy. Not a monument to a name, but a machine that still runs in silence. Not applause, but necessity. Not being admired, but being unavoidable. And so the genius does not care if the world curses him, forgets him, or rewrites him. He only cares that the stage still belongs to him, even if no one sees him standing behind it. They told you greatness is about being remembered, but what if the greatest power is to vanish and still control every choice, every path, every life, long after your name is gone? Power is not noise. Power is not applause. Power is clarity, discipline, and design. If you've watched until now, you already see the difference between illusion and reality. Genius is not born. It is built, step by step, choice by choice. Most will forget this message and return to comfort. A few will not. Which one are you? If this made you think, subscribe to Philora, share this with someone who needs it, and leave your thoughts below. Your voice matters more than silence, unless you choose silence as strategy.